Now that we have heard about the current and future trend of kindergartens in both Hong Kong and Malaysia, so I'm sure many of us might be wondering, how can we prepare our institution, how can we prepare our preschool towards these changes? How can we start to shift our focus in our teaching? How can we develop our teachers, etc.? Therefore, we have set aside the following panel discussion to talk about these topics in depth on how to steer our kindergartens towards the changes in the future. But before we get right onto the topic, I would like to take this time to introduce some of the special guests that we have right now. We have just heard us speak Puan Molisa, the Assistant Director of Languages for Penang State of Education Department. And we also have Mr. Darren Au, the Greater China Senior Development Manager for Cambridge Assessment English. Our very own GPEX Malaysia and Hong Kong's Managing Director, Mr. Bryan Teow. And lastly, we have the founder of and CEO of Mikids Multimedia Teaching Program, Mr. Edwin Pang. So hello, panelists.
Hi.
Hi.
Hello.
Hey everyone. Hello.
Good afternoon.
Hi.
Good afternoon.
Great to see you all here.
It's good to see you guys here.
Good to see you guys. Yeah.
And it's great to see all of you here as well. So we have had a very interesting session earlier. We learned a little bit about what's the current trend right now and how we are moving forward from here. And that's why right now in this moment we want to talk a little bit about that. Well, I do have one question for.
We talked about the current and future trend in Malaysia, and you've talked about teacher development, how to prepare your kindergarten teachers through the master trainers, etc. And we have also heard, the focus for your learners. So my question to you is, how can we as a kindergarten and as an institution prepare for these sort of changes that you have mentioned?
Okay, thank you, Jason. All right. Actually, when I have my discussion with my master trainers, they are all teachers. They come from secondary schools, they come from primary schools, and they come from preschool as well. They talk about hybrid learning. All right. The idea of hybrid learning, that means you have the both. Okay, you have both online and also offline teaching. So what can be done virtually for the children, where they feel comfortable to learn, where they feel safer to learn, when it comes to hybrid learning, that means technology will come into it. Technology will be in the picture. So I myself, like any other teachers, that we are scared to actually touch any keys on the keyboard when we are having this online meeting, for example. All right, isn't it? Okay, Bryan was like nodding his head. Yeah, we follow. Okay, Jason say, okay, press this, and then the screen will come up. So the same goes with our teachers. They are afraid to try. So what I always tell them is that do not be afraid to try when it comes to technology. You have to plan your lesson. All right. If you want it to be very effective, very what you call holistic kind of lesson, teaching and learning, you have to try it first. Because we can't guarantee that you're going to have that face-to-face kind of teaching and learning from November, let's say, until January. I can't tell you that. Isn't it? It depends on the situation. It depends on our government. So we have to be prepared. So, and on top of that, we do have the privileged pupils and we do have the underprivileged pupils. So on my part, my sector, we try to actually get information, students that need gadgets in order to learn, in order to attend their classes every day. I think that's the best one. Hybrid learning. I got that from my master trainer.
Thank you, Puan Molisa. And we will keep that in mind, hybrid learning, because I believe that tomorrow we do have a session about that, and where we explore into the possibility of hybrid learning. And, since we're at this question, how we can prepare our kindergartens, I thought of asking Mr. Edwin the same question as well, because, you are the founder and the CEO of the Mikids multimedia programs. You must have been on the constant forefront, to think about how we can challenge the traditional way of teaching, of learning, etc. So maybe you could share with us your opinion on this.
Okay. So come back to Mikids, right? We start the multimedia teaching programs in more than 15 years, right?
Wow.
Yeah. So when we start the programs, we will incorporate the teaching program with Gardner's theory, multiple intelligence, MI, right? So we know that these are multiple intelligence. They have 8 important components. First, language, logical thinking, music, picture smart, interpersonal skill, intrapersonal skill, kinesthetic, and nature smart. Okay, if we want to teach the children, we don't know what is their what is called difference intelligence inherent in each child. So when we develop the programs, we will put in all the components, okay, in all the learning sections. For example, right, if we want to teach the children in language, listen. So okay, we came up the multimedia programs with music, right? The children can see with picture smart, they can hear. Okay, some of them they can follow the actions. So this is kinesthetic, right? So this is how we use the technology, multimedia programs from the beginning, right? So I would like to say thank you to my English consultants, Dr. Jerry Knows and Professor Suraida Muhammad Don. So both of them helped me. I think Molisa, you know that, right? Yeah, 2017, Professor Suraida also involved in the BloomMed, right?
Yes, yes.
So they told me, if we want to develop the programs 15 years ago, we should follow a benchmark, which is so-called CEFR from Cambridge. So thank you for both of them for helping me to develop these programs. So with these multimedia teaching programs during these pandemics, is very meaningful, right? Because the teachers, right, they can use the multimedia programs to conduct the lessons, okay, even though the children cannot go to school. We will bring the whole classroom to their home. So this is something we so-called technology is work and help this during this pandemic. All right, thank you.
All right, thanks, Edwin. And I think, to sort of conclude that point, basically, to teachers, don't be discouraged and, keep on trying, keep on embracing the technologies that we have at the moment while we are teaching our young learners. Now, talking about young learners and their learning journey, just now, Ms. Cookie did briefly talk to us about their focus on assessment in Hong Kong, and then one Molisa as well, but she mentioned a little bit more in depth about how we can use assessment to help teachers and also help learners alike in their learning journey. And I believe that, assessment is a component that we rarely talk about, especially for learners at such a young age. But, I have right here with me from Cambridge Assessment English himself, Mr. Darren Au. And I just want to ask this question to you. Could you share with us what's the importance of assessment? When do you think it's the right time for learners to participate in them? And, how can we actually use assessment to help with learners' learning journey?
Okay, got it. Okay, thank you, Jason. So basically first, I believe when we talk about assessment, when we hear this word, we think of exam, tests. So it might be kind of scary or so. But really, to be honest, I would say that for assessment, there's different types of assessment in education. All assessment methods have a different purpose. They serve a different purpose after instruction. So basically, one main thing to remember is that assessment is a learning tool. What it comes from, it provide what is in common for all assessment. It does provide a snapshot, or actually just a picture of the student or the learner's understanding of that time frame or that specific time during that learning process. So basically, this is the main thing you really need to remember. It's not really just focus on exam or test. It's really a learning tool. So basically for this, as in assessment, it also echoing for Molisa. Assessment actually helps the teacher determine what to teach and how to teach. In the end, it's actually how effective they're teaching it too. There's basically different assessment for both learners and teacher at the same time to working on the quality assurance. So assessment actually help you to understand the strength or the weakness of the learners. So you basically, during the process, in the meantime, during the phase of learning, you can actually guide or adjust your teaching methodology, or basically different structuring accordingly to their their learning phase. So, or if you're by giving like a grade assessment, you can basically track their performance, giving them like a student development or like improving their learning. Basically, the key part I would say is like choosing assessment type. This is the first thing we need to do. It's not about just think of, oh, assessment must be for tests or exam. Because even if we're talking about before entering a course, when we're doing a diagnosis test, that is also an assessment to just seeing that which one fits them to enter which course to provide them the best support or the best solution. So this will be one of the things is like the importance of the assessment. So the other part is like, well, your question is, the other part is basically what is the right time for the learners to participate in assessment, right? And how can we utilize it? So as I mentioned earlier, assessment is always a part of the solution. We cannot just, we shouldn't think of it as in, okay, assessment, it should be after the course or like just at the end of the quarter or like the academic year. It's not about just test or exam. It's always part of the solution. As I said, it's really from start to the finishing line. We can think of it as in a sport. Let's not think of it as in education or like learning something. We're thinking of a sport. When we're doing, let's say, running marathon, when we start, do we do a prep? Do we do a warm-up or prep? Or how can we do a training before joining a marathon? We need to find out a solution. Or maybe that we can go online right now and search how to run a marathon. Really simple like that. But there's tons of solutions. Which one really suits you? It really depending on which one is your current criteria or your standard right now. So this is the first part we need to know about. And then the second part is like, we need to know the learners, they are actually like a runner. So when the first part, they know the program, in the mid-time, they will be training on it. They'll be learning it during the time, maybe half a year. We'll see, oh, how it's going. Is this program working for them? Is there any improvement from the beginning to here? That is another type of assessment. Then afterwards, of course, we can see the final result. It doesn't need to be a final result assessment from us, as we know their goal, as in they need to complete a marathon, let's say. So it doesn't need to assess them for that. We can find a high recognized firm or a high recognized certificate or assessment to qualify that. It's like marathon. I don't need to say that, okay, I trained my learners or my students to run that. Because once they participate in some global competition or some high recognized assessment competition, it's already proven the result. So that is another type of assessment given the result too. So basically for this entire thing, what I'm trying to explain is actually assessment is always part of the solution. You cannot really think of it just like which time is the perfect time. It's always, there's a time for it. Like from beginning, let's say it's helpful at the beginning to just diagnose which one is the best strategy for them. Then we can also, there's some assessment during the training, during the progress, to see how to adjust the strategy or the learning method for them. That is another formative assessment. Then at the end, we can also do some summative assessment, like to see how they come up with the result. Do we need any extra support, additional support, or actually this is the good way to go? We can also do a lot of analysis afterwards. So this is the thing that the message I would want to bring up with assessment. So regarding to this. And at the end, basically, really, again, want to echo Molisa, because that it was amazing that it's recently, because of the school closure and the and the COVID situation, really hybrid learning environment is really the key, the good way to go. And this is actually where assessment also comes along too, because right now, a lot of learners, they're demotivated. They don't know actually how to learn. They don't know what to do. We're giving them a textbook, and then so basically, even time to time, maybe a month, to give them a worksheet or some, these are type of assessment can also motivate learners to learn, especially during this pandemic time. So thank you for the sharing. That's it for me. Thanks.
Thanks, Darren. And maybe, we can listen to Puan Molisa on this question as well, since you have shared a little bit on assessment earlier.
Yeah, actually, two words come to my mind when Darren mentioned formative assessment. So actually, with ELTC KPM, we have actually done a workshop, a full workshop on formative assessment itself. So actually, we guide the teachers, how and when. True, Darren, there's no specific time to actually run the assessment. It can be daily if the teachers wanted it. It can be weekly. It can be monthly. Depends on what you want to have a look at. Depends on what you want to actually gauge the students at. So from the assessment, you will plan the next step for the students. All right. So it based on the pupils' progress, how they develop, how they progress. Then learning materials adaptation and design will come in, all right? And differentiated learning will come in as well. It is based on assessment. So actually assessment is a big part, but I how shall I say that? Teachers are not really into this assessment yet. We are still planning to have workshops to enhance, the skill of to assess your own students and to actually take things from the assessment and to build or to plan your next lesson. All right. So yeah, very much agree with Darren. Assessment, it should be another tool that you have to take into account whenever you plan your lesson. Yeah. All right. Thank you, Jason.
Thanks, Puan Molisa. And it's really refreshing to hear both of your takes on assessment, because it really hasn't been the most talked about topic, especially in young learners' learning journey. And I hope that this will sort of inspire and encourage teachers out there to really look into assessment and how you can use that as a tool to enhance your learners' progress. And earlier we talked a little bit about hybrid learning, a little bit about technology. Edwin has shared all the 8 things regarding the multimedia learning and etc. Now we want to talk about that a little bit, because technology, it has always been a main focus for learning throughout the years, but it has been especially prevalent in the past 2 years because of COVID, because of lockdown. Teachers are sort of in the spot where they need to rely on technology. They need to begin to learn how to use technology. So my question, maybe Edwin, you can help us out here a little bit. How can we sort of use technology to educate the future learner? This is a little bit broad, but it would be very interesting to hear from you. What's your take on that?
Okay, thanks, Jason. You see, when it comes to these top questions, I didn't expose to Zoom meeting before this pandemic, right? My first Zoom meeting is with Bryan. Remember, Bryan? One day you called me and said, shall we have a Zoom meeting? I said, what is that? Because the lockdown, we cannot meet each other, right? So during the Zoom meeting, Bryan shared with me, said, GPEX is going to do video recordings. You see, during this lockdown, right, pandemics, a lot of businesses have been slowed down, even those they cannot what we so-called operate anymore. Okay, even those our industry, right? So children cannot go to school. But as an educator, we know that, yeah, education cannot totally stop. No choice. You have to find a way how to continue, okay, let the students continue to study, right? So, so from there, after the first meeting with Bryan through Zoom, so quickly, my company, we developed the LMS system, learning management system, right? So from there, we conduct training to teachers. How are they going to conduct the lesson effectively? Okay, provide the children they have internet at home. So their study will not stop because of the pandemic. Okay, so I encourage most of the school or teachers, even though they didn't exposed to this technology, but no choice, we have to. All right. So I believe Bryan Molisa, you have to do more hard work to encourage all the principal teachers. Please, you have to take part in this. All right. So for GPEX, they did a lot. They did a lot. All right. Back to you, Jason.
All right, thank you, Edwin. And it's great that you highlight, GPEX has done a lot in this regard. So maybe I would like to check with Bryan as well. When we talk about technology, how can we actually use it to educate the future generation? Just now, Edwin did mention a little bit about LMS, introducing that to them. Are there anything more to just the LMS? And maybe you'd like to hear your take on that.
Thank you, Jason. I think in my opinion, technology shouldn't be regarded as just a tool to enhance teaching or learning. I think as of now, I'm still, in my opinion, I think it's still underutilized at the moment. The reason is because what I can think of is we should leverage on this technology to do some like pre-teach, the lesson, so that we can introduce them, such as like learning new words, or maybe do some pre-recording video, and then so that they can learn through video, so that they can acquire the knowledge through using like what Edwin mentioned just now, through learning management system or any platform, so they can learn at their own pace, But when they come to classroom, then we can focus more on skills development. How can we assign more tasks, or how can we create more, I will say, skill-based, learning lesson to develop the language skills, rather than to feed them with language knowledge. Because nowadays it's a bit different from last time, because now we can access to mobile phone and anything, anytime, so that we can put some, I would say, create that kind of learning content. We can put it, plug it to the platform. They can learn again and again. But we will spend with our students more time in the classroom, to create the, I would say, task-based learning, like what Principal Cookie mentioned just now. You can create like a fun game, learn through play or something like that. Therefore, this will help us to develop the 21st century skills, so that these students, they are able to cope with the future challenges. And that is my personal opinion about, how should we, take the advantage of technology for future education. Yeah.
All right, thank you, Bryan. And we do have one last question, since both of you mentioned the way of using technology as such. We also, you have also mentioned a little bit on imparting knowledge, imparting skills to our learners. So I want to take this time right now to focus a little bit more on the skills part. We have mentioned, Ms. Cookie mentioned them. We have heard Juan Molisa talked about them a little bit. From an academic standpoint, what are some vital skills? What are some important skills that young learners need to develop? And how can institutions right now prepare to teach this sort of skills to their young learners? So maybe Bryan, you can help us to.
Wow, me again.
Yeah.
But it's a very interesting topic, I think. From a young age, right? Life skills to me is very important. Life skills such as critical thinking, creative thinking. I personally think that need to be developed in our learners, especially when they are in preschool. But how can we actually help our learners to develop this kind of like skills, life skills, is, as I mentioned before, is how they approach the task, assignment or classroom activities. And I think our teachers currently, they are having quite a challenging time to design the suitable task, because a task with no purpose is a waste of time. To me, we can design a project, we can design a game, or we can design, maybe like learn through play, right? But we need to, at the same time, as mentioned by Darren, is we should use assessment as a tool, it's a learning tool to assess and to progress the learners as well. And not only academic, but also life skills. I'll give you an example. We can have a checklist for our young learners, which we are able to keep track, the tasks those tasks they have completed. Every task we assign to them, we should be able to keep track so that it will help us to understand better how well the students are able to perform, in this particular task. And then it also helps us to design the upcoming, content to suit the needs of the different learners in one classroom. Because I believe in Asian classroom, right, definitely we will have a mixed ability of students in the class. And it's really not fair to use one particular textbook to teach mixed ability students. So as mentioned by Molisa, after we analyze the progress of the learners, we track the progress, we need to do proper adaptation, adapt to the learners. How can we design this? And one particular skills which I would like to really emphasize on is a learning to learn skills. Because I think for the future generation, I think they need to master this learning to learn skill to really, face future challenges. Because this will make one learner to be more independent and also self-motivating. Because independent and self-motivating is very important for them, because we can foresee, for example, as Edwin mentioned just now, we never expect COVID-19, this pandemic. But when it comes to us, we really need to motivate ourselves to face the challenges, right? Every one of us facing the same problem. And then I think for for this younger generation, I think this life skills is important. And that is the reason why there are a lot of more examples. But I believe that when educators begin to view education as more than just passing down knowledge, we can begin to look into various skills to develop in our younger generation. And I believe that life skills, 21st century skills, definitely is something that we can do more through assigning the tasks to the students more on the skills development side. But of course, we still need to allocate some time for academic skills as well. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Bryan. We do have a few minutes left. Maybe we can also hear from Darren about your point of view, since you're from Cambridge Assessment English, and Cambridge is renowned for developing this sort of life skills in their curriculum, integrating them and such. So in your opinion, what do you think is a very important skills for our young learners to have?
So basically for skills-wise, I'm not going to talk much about describing the skills, because as everyone, I'm sure that we all know about, familiar with it, 21st century skill and so. These creative, critical thinking, collaboration, all these skill sets, I think it's all important. It's a core for developing as in a global international citizen. So this is for long-term wise, we're not trying to get them something to be, oh, you gain this knowledge, so you can do this and do that. But it's for developing to be a global citizen, for education, for job placement, and etc. So for these in Cambridge, what we do is actually we often use the word term skills. It's just because it's easy to understand. But however, the correct term that we actually use is actually competency. So basically, this is a combination of three aspects of being able to do something. So what you need to know in order to do it. Second one is the attitude. You need to do it well. The third one is the ability to do it well, fluency and confidently in real time. Essentially, skills is what you get when you practice something. So these are the three aspects that we focus on as in developing this. And when we bring them all together, we basically came up with a clear model or a framework, you can say. Basically, it's called Cambridge Framework of Life Competency. So it includes can-dos, of course, when you're familiar with CEFR. All these is actually conducted and included with the CEFR can-do statement. So basically, it is actually easy to align to making sure that you know that which age group or which certain development curve is. And this is actually provided more from the CUP publishing side as in the materials. So this is what I'm sure that we will have more section tomorrow on this. But one thing I actually want to add on to this is for the CUP materials, the soft skill part is really important. And it actually, why the teachers, a lot of them are not developing them, is because it's an intangible skill set. You cannot really measure them. But when we give them an assessment, oh, it's easy. I'm a good teacher because I can ensure my learners get 90s or oh, it's a 60. So what should I do? Well, it's a clear benchmark. But now when we talk about skill sets, collaboration, critical thinking, see, I'm a great teacher because I can train my learners have critical thinking. Okay, this is something that's really hard to measure, and teachers not knowing that this is important or willing to teach. It's just hard to measure, and there's some parts that is kind of like misunderstanding between the message delivered or the content wise. So this is the part I think we need to support more with the teachers, that how to build them confidently to pass on these knowledge or the skill sets to the learners. So that's all I want to share. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Darren. And we will keep that word in mind, competency, and we will use that from now onwards instead of using skills. Thank you all so much, each and every one of you, for taking your time off and really share with us about all that we have mentioned today. We would like to take this time to say thank you, and we will see you all, hopefully some of you tomorrow, for the rest of the sessions. All right, thank you, Bryan. Thank you, Edwin. Thanks, Darren. And also thank you, Molisa.